There's an elite band of 80 men within the British military whose selection process is longer and tougher than even special forces. They operate in extreme environments where just to survive, you need a level of skill that puts you in the 1% of the 1%. I spent the day climbing Commando Ridge with a former member of this unit, Tommy Kelly. From surviving in the Arctic to Afghanistan, hunting Al-Qaeda in the Hindu Kush, for 10 years, Tommy served at the sharp end. This is the historical proving ground, where for over 80 years, they have trained and tested their skills for every conflict from the D-Day landings to the Falklands and the Middle East. I'm going to dig deep and share with you the mindset secrets of the men who do a harder selection course and get less pay and recognition than special forces.
It's a dark, difficult process. You see all sorts of things about yourself that you maybe didn't know beforehand, and I think you realise in the process that you are an individual with flaws, with blindnesses to certain things, and this is all exposed to you, and it's only exposed to you because of the horror that you put yourself through. So Commando Ridge is one part of this whole expanse of the Cornish coast. Much of it steep, rocky, impregnable, and going back into the days of the Second World War, where the ML branch can trace its history back to. This was a location where the branch learnt so-called vertical assault techniques. In other words, climbing up hostile terrain, either in the form of normal climbing as you would, or grappling hooks, ladders, basically developing techniques that would allow, undetected, a small number of men to get from a raiding craft onto a cliff, ascend the cliff up onto the top, and then to be able to bring a follow-on body of troops up that same cliff in order to then go on and strike. And this is Occupy France, to go on and strike seemingly impregnable targets. And Commando Ridge is a feature amongst all of the different coves and cliffs in this area. And like a number of the other areas that the ML branch used back in the Second World War, Commando Ridge was one of those areas, and it became particularly iconic just because of what it allows. It allows troops to gain access to the base of it via a landing craft, so coming in from the sea, to then disembark, to then climb up this pretty difficult ridge, really exposed ridge. So practicing all of these techniques that up until this point the training has been teasing out, to get to the top, and then to bring on follow-on troops in their rear.
I think from that you've got that iconic piece, which is a thread that's run through Commando history and the mountain leader branch. Is it still a valid test? Because since World War II, climbing kit, equipment, techniques, all of that has come on. Do they just climb? Is it just a traditional climb now, or is it still a testing ground as well? I know the coast is.
Oh, it's still a testing ground for sure. And most people out with elite climbing circles, it's a pretty committing testing route to do. And with this route in particular, you've got all of the atmospheric elements. You've got the sea crashing underneath you, seagulls dive bombing you from up above, just the sense of sensory overload that you can get from something like this. And of course, what that can do is really quickly intimidate you on the rock face. So a key part of this, as per climbing more generally, is just that head game and how to keep it in check.
I haven't done any of this for a long time, so, and it's just very exposed. Now that's the big, if you remove the wind and being on the sea cliffs, it would immediately dial it down in intensity. But it's like Tommy, this is why it's a testing ground, because the climbing isn't that difficult, but what makes it difficult is the mental side of sensory overload. So you're dealing with all of this around you, so it's being able to have that state control, cut that out, and just concentrate on what you have to do, let that one hand work the other. So for me, like when it's like this, he's bringing it down. I don't need to worry about what we're going to do next. All I need to think about now is, well, I'll get onto that line, do an abseil, then I'll make safe down there, and then Tom will move on, and then I'll do my next thing. Just compartmentalise it into what do I need to do at each stage. So if I sit back and try and take in too much, that's when you get overloaded and overwhelmed. It feels stressful. Break it down, and also just accept it. Just accept, like, this doesn't feel that. So there has to be an element of accepting it, which is also trust.
The ML branch has become the enabler for the wider Royal Marines to operate in mountainous and cold weather environments, and to act as the Commando Brigade's eyes and ears on the battlefield. The Falklands War, and more recently the Balkans, Afghanistan, Iraq. These are all examples of both its reconnaissance and surveillance function, as well as its capability for kinetic direct action, which has seen it on multiple occasions engage with and destroy enemy forces, typically far larger in size. It's a 9-month course. Begins in Cornwall, moves on to Wales, heads up the Scottish Highlands, and then up to the Norwegian Arctic. I suppose the standout moment of the Cornwall phase, amongst many, is the night climb that you do. It's all building towards being able to climb and assault these cliffs in darkness. It's all predicated on military necessity. So in reality, you would always climb and move under the cover of darkness. There's no point in being a brilliant climber if you're unable to apply this at night time. Just doing that for the first time, I suppose because it symbolically represents, or always did to me, one of the things that made the ML branch quite special. Climbing sea cliffs at night. And you've seen this in the videos and all of the literature within the Marines, where I found myself doing it. One half of me was going, Jesus Christ, I can't believe I'm doing this. And then the second half was just filled with, I suppose, joy, because here I now was doing this thing at this phase on this particular course, and another step towards gaining that qualification that meant so much to me. And traditionally, after the night climb, everybody gets up it, hopefully in one piece. We'll then jump on the coach, come back to this place here, the Star Inn. Everybody piles in here, up to the bar. There's a mountain of Cornish pasties on the bar. You just shovel into your mouth, and as much Guinness as you can drink to rehydrate afterwards. So it's quite a symbolic moment, and even though it's early on in the course, it's still something that feels like a rite of passage. It's a long, difficult course, and it's renowned for being long and difficult. The attrition rate is huge.
How many did you lose on phase?
Well,
what did you start with on phase?
there was around 80 that began at the aptitude phase for the course, and there was, I think, 8 of us left standing at the end. So a big drop-off rate. And it's not as if any of us beginning that course weren't strong, fit, motivated. We all wanted to be there. But I think it's the reasons why we wanted to be there that probably made the difference. I was really motivated by a sense of wanting to belong to this particular outfit that had been a feature of my mind for years. I mean, even before joining the Marines. If I could one day become good enough to get into the Marines and then to get into the Mountain Leader branch, then I suppose in terms of how that answered questions to my identity, it became a really, really powerful thing. And when you're in those moments, like you so consistently are on courses like that, as you well know, when all you want to do is curl up into a ball and go to sleep and just for it all to be over. If it feeds into that sense of who you are or who you want to be, then that will pull you through. And for all of us that were still there at the end, barring those who through no fault of their own got injured along the way, it was just that desire to be a part of this organisation, to be able to then go on and do the things that this organisation did operationally. I was taken by this sense of difficulty, challenge, and becoming part of something special. It became clear to me that if I wanted to do this thing, this committing thing, which was joining the military, then why would I not push myself to become part of what I was now fairly sure was the best outfit to become part of. A sense of wanting to push myself and to become part of something that in so becoming would effectively make me better than I was. A real motivator. I suppose that same thing you could apply on another level to the MLs within the Marines. I'd met these people by now, and there was a professional competence and a know-how and a way of operating, even down to the way that they carried themselves, the confidence with which they spoke, seeing them operate in the mountains. I just wanted some of that. And again, just being able to throw myself into something that would just test those elements of ability to overcome hardship, difficulty, if I was successful in doing that. As is the case when you do hard things, regardless of what it is, you're generally a better person at the end of it for doing it, aren't you?
What you're going into is something that there's so many uncontrollables and so much hardship. If you don't feel like you've got control over why you're there, then you're going to feel overwhelmed. And it's going to feel really negative as well. It's going to be a negative. It's actually I've never heard it described that way. It's a really interesting way to phrase it. When you, wherever it comes from, when you have that very clear reason to pull you forwards, it means you stay in control no matter what's happening.
It's establishing that locus of control in yourself. I mean, it's so easy to surrender that, isn't it? Unwittingly, by not wanting to upset people or to just go along with the crowd. You can just sleepwalk your way very easily into things that you don't want to do. And it's never really a good place to find yourself, is it? And I think it's just having that courage, I suppose, to recognise what these things are in the first place that you want to do. In this case, something quite difficult. And being willing to go and do it and to make the sacrifices along the way as you go and do it. Because ultimately what you are achieving by doing that is it's a very deeply personal victory, I would say. It's yours, it's nobody else's. And just what that offers you as an individual, the benefits are just so obviously wide, aren't they? But the confidence in your ability, your confidence, I suppose, in your ability to do hard things, your ability to not be affected by fear, which I think is an absolutely crucial part of not just this and a course like this and the military, but just life in general. It's so easy, isn't it, to be sidetracked and knocked off course by fear, justified in some cases, but not justified in many other ways. And if your instinctive reaction to fear can become less one of wanting to turn away from it, instead turning towards it and at least asking the question about what is there in this to fear, and then can I do something to mitigate that, then that's a far better path to be on, I think. And the way that you can apply that to, climbing is a classic example of something that is, intrinsically dangerous, isn't it? The consequences are high. It takes little imagination to work out what could go wrong when things go wrong. It's an inherently fearful thing to conceptualize. But if you look at the components of that, and where is that fear coming from? Well, it's fear of falling, it's fear of injury, completely valid. What can I do to mitigate those things? And if you learn, and if you know what you're doing, then there's lots of things that you can do to mitigate that actually happening. You can learn how to climb well, climb safely, to identify the places where you can place bomb-proof protection. You can develop your rope work such that it's second nature. And what you're doing is just building in this safety blanket, effectively, that allows you to do something that is technically dangerous and fearful, but not be intimidated and become fearful because of it. And you can then take that whole approach and just apply it to life more broadly. I think the value in the training on a course like this is that it just instills in you such a degree of self-confidence, not very different from arrogance, self-confidence and self-reliance. You become more and more accustomed to just backing yourself when the shit hits the fan. And so when things start happening that are out of your control, you've actually got a pretty decent sense that you can probably fix it, sort it out, navigate through it, instead of just throwing your hands up into the air and saying, oh, it's unfair, things haven't landed in my favour. But again, it comes back to that element of control, doesn't it? Where does the sense of control lie? Do you believe that it rests in you? In which case, you can determine the environment around you. Or do you believe that your success is actually in the hands of the gods, the weather, the training team? If it's the latter, then you're not going to make it very long, are you?
And life's, I think, more than that, because that's the same thing with life. It's the whole ownership piece that can central to that piece on control is ownership. You have to take ownership of everything, even when things aren't your fault, because you are going to get thrown curveballs, unique challenges you faced in the ML branch. So yeah, unique to the MLs, I guess, or things you knew.
It's maybe just more a question of the degree of intensity with which things that you would be familiar with in the Marines present themselves. The cold is colder. The heaviness on your shoulders is heavier. The distances are further. The dark nights are just that little bit darker, and the rain is definitely wetter than the normal. And it's probably an amalgamation of just a resilience in the face of all of these things, and an ability to not be overfaced by them, and to just be able to continue operating, to stay on task. That is probably the essence of the ML course, or the ML branch, rather. It's a very specialist branch with very many technical outputs, but really the ability to persevere to quite extraordinary levels in particularly hostile environments and just keep going is, I would say, the hallmark of the ML. There's a professionalism that is above and beyond, I would say, that within the Marines. You know, the Marines are a highly professional organisation, but this is just ramped up to a whole new level within the ML branch. You're such a mastery of their craft, and again, this was one of the attractions to me of taking that journey to become a master of this same craft as well. The ability to apply all of these climbing, mountaineering, mountain movement skills in such a hostile environment, and to operate as soldiers within such an unforgiving environment absolutely demands a professionalism, you know, a real dedication to the cause. And that's something that I've seen throughout every single ML that I've ever come across. Just highly professional, ultra committed, competent blokes.
They are still held as this pinnacle of professionalism within a community that is regarded as the pinnacle of military soldiering. And so, because I think exactly for what you said, it is the epitome of professional soldier. That's what an ML stands for, like that absolute professionalism in every single sense. So even within Special Forces world, MLs are this special breed that can always be relied on. No matter what you give them, whatever you task them, it will get done.
I think there's just a generic sense of value that comes from doing and having done hard things. That to me is just such a central thing to do. If you are to have a fulfilled and successful life, do hard things. They will test you for sure. And in testing you, you will grow in all the right ways. And growing equals movement, and that, to me at least, equals contentment and satisfaction. And, you know, isn't that what we're all looking for in life? Yeah.